Alright, pick your poison. A handsome, charming demon who has worked for a long time, over centuries, dating back to the Joseon era, forced to sign a contract with a charming, prodigious CEO of a Korean conglomerate, or maybe you know it as Chaebols. Or maybe you would be more interested in the embodiment of a charming, self-made man who encounters a woman who seems to specialize in finding missing people. They work together to unravel the mysteries behind these creatures who live in Gyeongsang, Korea during the time of Japan colonization in 1945. Or you would be more interested in a story about a Ssireum wrestler who's in a slump. Oh, right, there's some murder too, I guess. Now, obviously, I'm underselling it by quite a lot. But that is indeed the main gist of the story. And unfortunately, that doesn't really sound that interesting, doesn't it? I mean, I take a bet that most of you don't even know what Ssireum even is. But don't worry though, after watching the show, I can guarantee that a lot of you will understand Ssireum. At least, barely. Well, here's the thing. I'm making a video covering Flowers in the Sand, not because it's one of those shows that is so bad that it's good. I'm making this video because it's one of those shows that is so good that it's worth your time. Definitely. Is it perfect? Nah, not even close. It definitely has a lot of shortcomings, with leaving a lot of things to be desired. And unfortunately, one of those shortcomings is definitely the coverage on the Ssireum part. It's not really that extensive, but I'll get into that later. Talking as if I'm a Ssireum expert. But before that though, we have to get into the story. The main gist of the story is indeed as what I've told you. It mainly revolves around this Ssireum wrestler, Kim Baek-doo, a prodigious Ssireum wrestler with a lot of expectations on his shoulders. Why? Because his whole family is a family of prodigious Ssireum wrestlers. His two brothers are also prodigious. His dad, Kim Tae-baek, is one of the legendary figures in Ssireum. His two older brothers has won multiple championships, and his dad, Kim Tae-baek, is a legendary figure. He is one of the most well-decorated Ssireum wrestler, at least in this story. And how about Kim Baek-doo? Well, he's no less prodigious. In grade school. He is really prodigious Ssireum wrestler. Back in grade school, he is so prodigious that he's widely renowned throughout the nation that he's gonna be the future of Ssireum. That's the expectations on his shoulders, which is rightfully so because he kept on winning all these championships back then, beating all these people that are above his weight class back then in grade school. But somehow, someway, along his adult life, he seemed to have lost his touch. He never managed to win any championships in his adult life. And we basically live along with Kim Baek-doo, shouldering all these expectations that kept on being unmet, eventually turning into pity that feels patronizing.
아빠 미안하다. 내만 장사 못 먹어. 내 혼자만 이래 허접스럽게 끝내버려가지고 내 아빠한테는 진짜로 미안하다.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, how do you get out of such a slump? Love, ladies and gentlemen. Love. Say it with me. Sarang. It does sound very cheesy when it's laid out like that, isn't it? But don't get me wrong though. The romance is actually one of the strong parts of this show. The chemistry between the two main leads is actually very good. The banter between the two main characters, Kim Baek-doo and Oh Hyo-kyung, feels so natural. It feels so natural because it feels so true to each of their characters' personality, which in turn makes the flirting between these two main characters feel so smooth and so nice to look at. Makes the romance feel so sweet. And romance, when it's portrayed well in media, just makes you feel good, doesn't it? And leaves you expecting more to your own situations, I suppose.
야야야.
And this is actually in line with what makes the show so special. The characters are great. Are they basic as fuck? Well, yeah, but so what? They're executed very well. Besides, because they are basic as fuck, they make the story so easy to consume. You don't have to think too much when you are watching the show. Makes the show feel super lighthearted, but because they are executed so well, the banter, the chemistry, the communications between all these different characters still feels super entertaining to watch, just kinda like turn your brain off kinda media. And then we get to enjoy all of these banters between all these different characters that feel so real, while also hyperbolic a little bit because it is a TV show, but it doesn't feel over the top. We get to see the struggles of Kim Baek-doo that is portrayed really well as well, and Kim Baek-doo's performance in Ssireum that keeps on eventually increasing and getting better and better.
아 감독님.
와, 뭐 할 말 있나?
네 회비 안 냈거든.
By the way, as we're talking about Kim Baek-doo, before we move on, as I was reading and watching things about the show, I discovered that the main actor, Jang Dong-yoon, is actually starring in two different TV shows that is airing at the same time, Flowers in the Sand and My Man is Cupid, which is crazy because he's starring as the main leads in these two TV shows, but that's besides the point. The interesting part is, prepare yourself, this MF looks like this in this other TV show. Can you believe it? Am I crazy here? I want to protest. So because like in this TV show, it's My Man is Cupid, right? He is supposed to be a Cupid, an angel. And the people around him is supposedly like seeing him as like this super handsome person. But am I crazy? Or he looks way better in Flowers in the Sand with that short hair. What is this hair, bruh? I don't know. Am I crazy? Please tell me I'm not crazy. He's way better looking in Flowers in the Sand, right? Okay, anyways, let's move on.
화이팅.
And back to Ssireum. I probably should have explained about Ssireum way before, but Ssireum, it's a Korean wrestling on top of a sand while wearing satba. What is satba? Satba is like this kind of cloth that is tied between your thighs that is used as leverage and the things do you use to grapple with your opponent. But that's about it. Simple enough, right? At least that's what I understand from the show. Anyways, believe it or not, the wrestling is actually quite good. Well, from what I see in my opinion, the wrestling itself is not really that bad in portrayal. Like the fights and the grappling and etc. Well, there is a lot of caveats to it, which I'll get into a little bit later, but the portrayals and the fights is actually quite entertaining to see. There are some different skills and techniques, which doesn't get too in-depth, but in a lot of sense you can see it as a good thing. Because it doesn't really go into depth, then you don't really have to have prior knowledge about wrestling or any combat sports to enjoy it. And for those of you that are really into combat sports, well, this show will not get into the Ssireum aspect with any degree of technicality. It's very bare bones, so don't expect that coming into it. Now, as I've said, there is still kind of some caveats to it. Like, for example, in the Ssireum part, as I've said, it's very bare bones. And as you're watching the show, you will get to see that the Ssireum is basically just the background. It's kind of treated just as the background for the story to get long and get moving. It's not really discussed in a very deep way. The main story is still gonna revolve around like the Kim Baek-doo struggle of being a slump, but not too much. Besides, on the part of the Ssireum, it's kind of like anime, kind of like this fictional and fantasy world. They don't really discuss of what's wrong with him, why he's in the slump, and etc. You're only gonna get discussions about talent and struggles and etc. But in some ways it can be a good thing as well, I suppose. Another thing that I find quite lacking is Oh Hyo-kyung's excuse to meet Kim Baek-doo. Oh Hyo-kyung, she's from Seoul, So she has to have a reason to go back to the small countryside town, right? The excuse they're using is to solve a murder mystery case. I find it really baffling when I was watching the show initially, because really you think the story about like a Ssireum expert who's in a slump really can't carry the show throughout. You think it's gonna be boring, so you have to have high intense murder mystery solving case along with it. I don't know, man. I just feel like K-drama has a lot of obsession with murders, detective stories, police, I don't know. Although, surprisingly enough, the murder mystery part is actually not that bad. It's actually pretty well fleshed out, well, rightfully so, because a part of the story will cover the murder part. There's a lot of stuff covering the murder part. So, if you are an enjoyer of like murder mystery, detective cases, you will definitely enjoy it quite a bit, because as I've said, it's fleshed out. It is gonna get you hooked quite a bit. Although, a little spoiler, I guess it applies to all the shows throughout, and is kinda true for K-dramas in general. The last 2 episodes are kinda whack in pacing. It will feel kinda weird and kinda stitched together to finish the show very rapidly.
귀엽다. 귀여워.
Regardless, I beg you, watch the show, make it more popular, so we can enjoy it and discuss it together. As you watch the show, maybe you will find the first episode quite boring. I personally find the first episode quite boring. Well, it's kinda the point of the first episode, because it is just supposed to get you accustomed to the pacing of the show, which is slow, boring. There doesn't have a lot of high impact stuff happening. It will have some of them later down the line, but throughout the show, there's not too much. But that's not the strong point of the show. The show is a light-hearted story and one of those TV shows that you can just turn off your brain and enjoy it. The comedy is good, the romance is good, the murder mystery is even quite good, but the greatest thing about the show is the banter, the great, lovable main character. He's the caricature of these like sports guys, those guys that you can describe it as like more bronze than brains, and it's written quite well. That's why he's very lovable, just like those guys in real life. Therefore, watch the show. Or not. Do whatever you want. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye. Have a great rest of your day.